Hello everybody, welcome back to BareRose Garage. What are we going to do today? Well, this video goes out to those people who are working on a little small block Chevy. But it kind of covers all makes and models, and I'll show you at the end of this video how I'm going to apply this kind of stuff to a Ford, not a Chevy. But for those of you looking to do this on a Chevy, I'll show you the tried and true method on how to drop your distributor. Well, this happens to be a Mallory version, but yeah, you get the idea. It's a basic general one for all small block Chevys. Big blocks too. That's why I love Chevy. It's the same exact distributor for both big block and small block. But anyway, skip through all of that. I was watching, well, the group that I'm involved with here, they're trying to help this guy out on all kinds of stuff. Well, he's running into a whole bunch of little troubles that are adding up to great big ones now. Now, I'm not going to go into all of that. I'm just going to show you the tried and true method of how to set this right the first time, anytime, all the time. So here we go. Again, we're back over here with my little small block Chevy. This happens to be a 1966 through 69 large journal 327. Now normally you never hear me talk about years, but I have to on this one to give you the exact on this stuff. And why the exact doesn't mean a whole hill of beans, and you'll see that in the end of the video here. But here we go. Okay, small block Chevy. You're going to be doing, let's say, a timing chain or dropping a distributor, all of that stuff. Anything to do with ignition timing. First and foremost, you have to find top dead center on number one. Now on a small block Chevy, you know it's over here, or if you don't know, it's over here, the one on the driver's side all the way to the front. Now Chevy does their firing, their cylinder numbers different than Ford or any of those. They're all a little different, so you're going to have to figure out which one you've got. But basically on a small block Chevy, it's number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, number 7, number 8. They go side to side like that, okay? Okay, that's the easy part. Now you found where number 1 is. First thing you do, you pull out your little ratchet here, okay? And on this one, it just so happens to be, and I love this one, and that's why I like the 66, the large journal. They're a 5/8 socket for all of the spark plugs. Now this comes into key later on, I'll show you. First thing you do is you take all of these spark plugs out of here. Now I've already done it off camera, I've loosened them up, so let's get them off of here. And as you can see, it's 5/8, okay? Key thing, this is why I love Chevy. Now every spark plug that you take out, set them down someplace where you can line them up. I don't care if you line them up cylinder hole to cylinder hole. Just line them up in a way that you know which hole that this came out of, okay? Now, what you're doing with that is after you've laid them all out and you're looking at them, look for ones that are different. Now these ones are just my masking ones that I stick in the hole when I'm painting them, so I don't give two craps about these. But the point is if you recognize a difference in one of them, you know one cylinder's got a problem, or that you can address, okay? So that's the first step in diagnosis. Every spark plug you pull out, line them up in a way that you know which hole they came out of. If you want to go through the trouble of going, okay, this is number 1 cylinder, okay, this is number 2 cylinder, however you got to do it, or if you just want to set them up on the fender as 1, 2, 3, 4 that came out this side and 1, 2, 3, 4 that came out that side. I don't care how you do it. Just make sure that you know which hole each one came out of for identification purposes. They can go back in any hole, it doesn't matter. Just so you know if there's a problem in this cylinder. That's the only reason you do that. We call that indexing, but I know indexing also means other things. Stay on topic. Point is, take them all out and pay attention to all of them as they look. If there's a difference in them, okay, you know there's something going on in that cylinder that's different than all the other cylinders. And you want to make sure all of them are pretty much the same. Anyway, skip through that. Okay, get these all out of there. And here we go. And yes, you're going to see me not do that because for the for the sake of speed of the camera. You've got your wrench on here, and leave that socket on there, and I'll show you why. Okay, so now to find top dead center. That is number one. The first thing you look for in any application that you're looking for, that you're working on. That is Mechanic Day 101. It's the first thing you learn anytime. Okay, I'll show you how to find it. It is super simple. People way overcomplicate this step. Okay, down here. And like I said, because it's a Chevy, it's I'm actually going to use my spark plug socket because it's the same one as the crank down here. Chevy knew you was going to be doing this. Okay, so you put your ratchet onto the crank, turn it clockwise. The engine turns clockwise. 99% of all engines turn clockwise. There's a few exceptions, so read your manual. But we're going to turn it clockwise. In the meantime, I'm going to take my thumb or my finger, whatever. I'm going to stick it over the number one spark plug hole where I pulled the spark plug out. Stick your thumb over it. Roll it over. And this is why I highly recommend doing this on an engine stand. Trying to do this inside the car is a pain in the butt, but you can do it. Roll it over, roll it over, roll it over. Right there. Blew my finger out of the hole. I know that's compression stroke. Now, and only now, do I look down at the timing mark that's right down here. Now, I'll line that up to my top dead center line. What's going on right now is that piston is coming up. Well, if I get that fan out of the way, that piston is coming up on compression. Now I just got to bring it up to where the piston is at its exact top dead center. For general purposes here, we'll just go off the harmonic balancer right there. There's top dead center. Now this one has already got a timing chain in it. All of that, so this is top dead. This center is, this cylinder right here is ready to fire. So where does that correspond to on this? Well, when you're working on a small block Chevy, a lot of people will say that rotor right there, see how it looks like a little parrot beak or arrowhead? That always points to number one. They're wrong. It changes. It depends on the year, make, model of the car and options that were put on the car. Sometimes they had to move that in order to be able to adjust the timing for the vacuum advance that this one doesn't have on there, but you get what I mean. They had to make clearance so you'd be able to time it. So they moved this all over the place. I'll give you an example here. Like I said, most people will set their distributor here, so that rotor points straight over to number one. Well, that didn't come in until later on. In 1955, when GM introduced the first V8 into the Chevy, that rotor actually points to number 6. If you have a 265, that's where that rotor is going to be pointing to, number 6. Not number 1. 1957, they point straight towards the carburetor. They don't point to any cylinder. They point straight ahead. Like this, straight ahead. If it's a fuel-injected one, they don't even point towards that. They're put in 180 degrees out and they point towards the firewall. Why did they do that? Because it depends on the distributor, the application, everything else that's on the car. Now, how are they able to do that? Well, I'll give you a little secret. This distributor has, right now, out of the car, it has no idea which one of these is number 1, number 2, number 8. It doesn't know. It doesn't care. The only time that number 1 becomes number 1 is when you drop this down and it meshes into the cam gear. And again, this will come into play later on in my video here, because I got one that I've actually got to put in 180 degrees out and it'll run just fine. So, how do you do this and make sure you're not 180 degrees out every single time? It's very common with small block Chevy because a lot of people overcomplicate stuff. First of all, if you're doing the timing set, and it just so happens that right there my coffee cup is sitting on an aftermarket timing set. And you know what? That timing set is set up for dot to dot, which is primarily usually what it is. But some timing sets that you get, especially aftermarket ones, you go to double rollers and high performance stuff, pay attention because some of them are 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and you got to set a ruler up in there or a straight edge and line them up. Also, if you're changing things around, like I said, if you're changing from, if you want to run 180 degrees out, sometimes you got to do that. You got to switch things around. My point is, and during the smog years, you ran into that. A lot of, from the factory, was 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock. It depends. It depends on the cam that was put in it. It depends on the timing set you put in it. By and large, OEM was always dot to dot. But never, ever take that for God's, gospel truth. Always go off the instructions that the timing set will give you. That one just happens to be dot for dot, but we'll skip through that. So if you've set for how your timing chain is set, you know, because you just did that little test there and poof, it blew your finger out of the hole because it's coming up on compression. Don't worry, it's just a little air pressure. You can feel the air pressure build up. I was exaggerating. It just goes and blows it out. That's how you know. Now this engine is at top dead center. We just have to match the ignition up to it. So, and it's the reason I'm doing this video is because I got to plug this hole. Pop the masking tape off of it. I'm pretty sure you don't have masking tape. Now, for those of you who don't know, on a small block Chevy, see the bottom of the distributor? All of them are like this. See that slot right there? Down inside this hole right here where the distributor goes, there's a rod that comes up that's got like a fork. And that fork has got to mesh up with that slot right there. That's what drives the oil pump. You have to have that in, otherwise your oil pump isn't working. Your oil pump is driven off of this cam gear, and this rides up against the cam. Now, on a small block Chevy, and this is a trick I learned a long time ago that I thought I was the king of kings. I thought I'd figure out something else that nobody else knows. And then YouTube come along and come find out quite a few people know this trick. It's probably the trick they used in the factory. But before that, and I get why a lot of you guys hate Chevys, trying to get this to go down in that hole and trying to get it to mesh, you want this, you're going to set it like everybody says you got to set it. Okay, I'm going to line it right up there with number 1, which is a complete waste of time, but okay. It won't go down all the way. Okay, so I know that oil rod is up there and it's not getting right in there. Now the old way that I used to do this is you pull this back out and you reach down in there with a flashlight and a flat blade screwdriver and you try to turn the oil pump to make it match up to that slot right there. But you'll notice, see how it's cone shaped in there? It's actually made to do it this way. Now for this purposes here, I'm going to set it up for a 55. On a 55, it's right there. Okay, I like setting it up this way because I know for sure where my rotor is for number 1. It points straight to the carburetor. Now, I got to get it to drop in with the oil pump drive. I got to get that oil pump shaft to line up in there, right? Now, how do I do it? Real simple. Again, you take your handy little ratchet that you still got in your hand, stick it down on there, put a little bit of pressure on this, wiggle, 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 and you'll notice, if you can see it there, right there, there she goes. The rotor is turning with the crank, and the crank is turning with the cam. Everything is still in time. And she just slid right in. She just locked herself in and set right in. All I got to do now is bring it right back over to top dead center. Compression. Compression top dead center. Okay? Here we go again. We just repeat the same process. And I know you can cheat this by just turning the engine backwards, but this is a very good habit to get into. Always check for top dead center compression. Meantime there, I'm watching my rotor spinning as I bring her on around to make sure that when my finger pops off, right there, did you hear it? I think you heard it. It pushed my finger away, you can see. So I know here comes compression. Line up my dot again. Number 1. Number 1 is straight in with that. My rotor right here is pointing straight into the carburetor. That's where they set them in 1955 on the 265. If I wanted to set it for 1957, they actually point to number 6 over here on this side. If you want to set it for the newer models, they slowly started to move it to number 1. My point is, and I hope you just seen that, you can put that anywhere you want. Now, when I put my cap on, I know this is top dead center. I'll take a little magic marker and I'll mark it right here on the side of the cap, right there. Then when I set my distributor, just like that, that is now number 1 cylinder. So my wire will run from here over to here, and then I'll run my firing order, which is real easy because it's right here. It will go clockwise because it's a Chevy, not a Ford. Pay attention to that because they're different. Chevys are always clockwise, so it goes number 1, spark plug wire will go over here. Number 8 will go over here. Number 4, you get what I'm saying. And then you just trace it, and because this is a stock manifold, it's written right here on the manifold. 1, 8, 4, 3, 6, 5, 7, 2, all the way around, back around to 2, which would be over here. That thing will run just fine like that. Now, why do I say that it doesn't really matter where that is? You can put you can put number 1 wherever you want to put it on the cap, as long as you follow the firing order all the way around and you leave yourself enough room that you can get your timing to adjust around everything. Because I don't know what's in your car. I don't know if you've got a different intake on there. I don't know if your firewall wraps around like this. I don't know. For different applications, Chevy moved where number 1 was. Like I said, 55, it was straight towards the carburetor. 57, it points to number 6. Later on, as things got more open, the firewalls got farther away. They made a little more room in there for that distributor. They moved it to point to number 1. but none of it matters as long as you wire it off of the cap correctly with the ones that are down below on your spark plugs. Now, the reason I talk about that about that is because of this. Here we go. I'll show you why. There she is, all complete. And you can see how dadgum easy it was to set that distributor down in there without having to reach in there and play around with that dadgum oil pump drive shaft. That's so much easier. And the first guy I seen do that on the internet was My Vintage Iron. I'm going to leave a link down here below. Go check his channel out. I'm pretty sure you already have because he's got a one heck of a cool channel. Anyway, what I got to do right here now, you can see on this big block Ford, with the tunnel ram right here, it's tight up against the distributor, even a small diameter distributor, and I'm going to be running a vacuum advance on that one. So what I got to do with it, here's a big block Ford distributor. Pretty much looks the same, except for Ford, a whole lot easier. You can see their drive shaft goes on a hex, so it's a lot easier to line up. But you can do that same method with Ford if you want. As long as that cam gear right there is connected to the camshaft, it'll always be in time. Anyway, what I got to do with this Ford now, I got to make the vacuum advance go this way. Don't pay attention to this one. That's actually a governor on there. Anyway, to make it clear the vacuum advance for this, I got to drop it in this way, so I'll be changing where number 1 is on the cap. And like I said, it don't make a whole hill of a lot of beans on that, because as long as my firing order's correct and I've got enough movement and enough play on my distributor to adjust timing, everything's good. It runs perfectly well that way. So the great debate on where do you put your rotor on a small block Chevy, or literally any of these old cars, these old V8s, you put it wherever you want to put it. As long as you wire off the cap right, you'll get it right every single time. And for a little caveat for everybody that's kind of like into history and all this stuff, and yes, it is where I got a lot of my information from, the good old Motors Manual. This is my 1958 one. You can see right here, number 1, this is for 1955. It's right exactly where I had it. It points right straight towards the carburetor. 1957, we jump over here. Number 1 is way over here on this side, so it points to number 6, or yeah, number 6. Math. Then you come over here to 1958, number 1. They put it back to going towards the carburetor. So how do you know which one it is? The only time that stuff really drastically matters is when it comes to these. When you buy factory pre-cut spark plug wires. Only thing it affects is your spark plug length. If you're making your own spark plug wires, which you probably are going to have to do on these old girls, because trying to find factory pre-cut ones, generally you're going to get the ones that the rotor points to number 1 cylinder. If you're moving them around and you move number 1 over to a different spot, just get you a set of make your owns and learn how to crimp the spark plug wires. Then you can put number 1 wherever you want to put it, and that sucker will run just fine. In fact, it'll run even better because you'll have more room to play with your vacuum advance and all that other stuff, for firewall clearance and just everything that goes with why they put that rotor in different spots. I hope that helps out there, and in the meantime, get out there and get the metal hot. And we'll get these old girls on the road back where they belong. We'll catch you on the next one.